All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Tara Linney. I'm here as part of Coding Connect, also with David Saunders, and we've got a special guest today for you. Say hello to Andrea Vasquez.
Hey everybody! Woohoo! Excited to be here.
So we're meeting with Andrea Vasquez today to ask her a couple of questions about coding. But how about if we start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. I am right now. I'm in Minnesota. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I work in an elementary school. It's a STEM elementary school. I'm the technology integration specialist there. So I get to work with all the students and the teachers to help them use technology in their learning. And I've been doing that. This is my second year in this position. Before that, I was an ELL teacher. So I worked with students who were learning English as a second language. And before that, I was in marketing. So teaching is kind of my second career, but knew all along that I wanted to do something with kids and just fought it till the bitter end. And then finally, I was doing all kinds of volunteering on the weekends with kids, and I just said to myself, you know what? Who am I kidding? I should be a teacher. So went back to school, and here I am.
Very, very cool. So we actually wanted to start by getting to know you a little bit and then finding out what got you into coding.
So my mom is a teacher, and my dad is in IT and does coding for his work. And I remember growing up, I saw him bring home huge like C++ manuals, and he was always learning some new coding language. And it's funny because I always told my parents, I never want to do anything like what either of you does. Neither of those jobs sound appealing to me. And here I am doing something that's pretty much a perfect mix of what they both do. And I'm like, okay, fine. Joke is on me. Yes, it's true. I just had to find my own way here. No, so I think my dad kind of inspired me to get interested in coding from a young age. Like I remember kind of looking over his shoulder when he'd be learning or, trying out some new language. And more recently, though, when I started blogging is when I really got interested in code because, you're trying to arrange something on your blog and it just doesn't work right and you need to do a little HTML magic. And so that's when I started really getting interested in code is when I started blogging. And then as I got interested in using more and more technology and learning, I worked with some teachers who were using Scratch, and that really opened up my eyes too to the way that coding could be so fun and exciting, not just in a syntax-based world, but in a world where there are interactive sprites and drag and drop blocks that really are easy for kids who maybe are not as good about the details of, slashes and spaces and things like that, and really want the visual aspect.
Very nice. Um, So how old were you when you first started teaching yourself how to code?
I'd say it was just a couple years ago when I really got into HTML. It was probably about 5 years ago, so I was probably about 26. And now last summer I was doing a lot with Ruby on Rails. So each year I'm trying to kind of tackle learning a little bit about a new language. I'm certainly by no means an expert. I am a learner through and through, and I'm just trying to pick up enough to do some cool things in languages, and it's so cool that it all transfers. I mean, really, when you learn, about loops or methods or functions in one language, the way that it works in another language is so similar that it makes it really easy.
So our viewers are all from different backgrounds. Can you tell us a little bit about, can you give us definitions of a loop, for example?
Sure. So a loop is when you want something that you're doing to repeat. So Scratch is one platform that I think is used pretty widely in schools, and that's something that kids are curious to discover almost within their first Scratch encounter, I'd say, is, well, sure I made that cat move, but how do I make it keep moving, or how do I make it keep turning? So a loop is the way that they would have it repeat, either a certain number of times or forever.
Nice. And what's a function?
So a function is really when you want I mean, think math, right? A function is when you have an input and you want a desired output.
Okay. Um, well, now let's talk a little bit about coding in schools. So, where does one get started when it comes to coding at the elementary level?
I think the easiest way to get started is really just to get started. I mean, there's so much talk about finding the right place to integrate coding or integrate anything really. And I think that coding is such a cross-curricular skill that you don't have to find necessarily the perfect spot to integrate it. It could be, you know, hey, when we're in the computer lab today, we're going to introduce something called Scratch, or we're going to take a look at code.org, or, you know, we're going to take a look at one of these platforms, and the integration happens as kids begin to make connections. I mean, it's cool to see, you know, they'll do a little bit today and they'll come back and do a little bit later, and then later in science class they might say something like, oh, right, you know, that reminds me of what we were working in Scratch. Like we were, for example, I was working with a 6th grade class and we were talking about the engineering and design process. And one kid related that back to what they had been doing in a coding project, and like, oh yeah, so in the engineering and design process I have to kind of explore and then create something, and then I test it out, and then I go back and try it again. And he's like, that's just like what I was doing when I was making my Scratch project. It didn't work the first time. I, you know, did a little bit more exploration and I figured out some other projects that use something similar, so I went back and you know, I fixed it. I remixed what I had done before, and I tried something else and it worked. So it's cool to see them making those connections. Even when you're not intentionally trying to integrate it, they see those overarching connections.
Nice. So I know, like, just in working with students and coding, like, a big connection is perspectives. Right? So whenever they're programming, they have to get into the mind of like what the object is that they're trying to move. Can you talk a little bit about that for our ELA teachers?
Yeah, so for example, I had a teacher, it was a 1st grade teacher who had just finished reading, I think it was even a Clifford story or something, and I went in and worked with some of the kids on what do you think happened next in the story? So they were using Scratch Junior. And in order for them to really get into how they were going to sort of reenact that, or how they were going to demonstrate that on Scratch Junior, they had to create each character, each sprite, and then think about, so Clifford, what would Clifford do, and how would he move, and where would he go, and what would kind of be Clifford's personality traits that we want to show here? So one kid said, well, what if we showed Clifford as a really small dog and then we had him grow? So great, you know, that's one of the pieces from major pieces from Clifford's story, is that this kid was going to figure out a way to animate through Scratch Junior. So when you think about, you know, each character's perspective and kind of the ways that kids kind of have to get into that mentality as they're coding, the sort of like I was saying before, the connections kind of happen cross-curricular ways.
That's cool.
And so there's some projects that you've been working on, one in particular called CoderDojo. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So CoderDojo, I got involved with almost by accident. I started doing a little bit of volunteering last year and with some coding organizations, and I heard about CoderDojo and that there was one in the Twin Cities area where I live. And basically, it's this global network of free computer programming clubs for kids all over the world. And it was started in, I think, Ireland or maybe Scotland. And it was started by like this 17-year-old kid who said, I want a space where I can be programming on the weekends with my friends, and it'd be really cool if there could be some mentors there who could help us out if we have questions. So basically, it's this space. Ours is at the University of Minnesota, and we have all of these people who work in the industry who volunteer their time and come and teach different coding platforms. So, for example, the one that I volunteer at, we have Scratch, we have Python, and the Python group integrates with Minecraft. You can imagine how popular that station is. There's an Arduino station where they're learning how to code Arduino so that it lights up and makes different things appear across a marquee. There's a web group where they're learning how to make websites. There's a Ruby group. All kinds of really cool coding platforms, and it's fun because then repeat visitors come, repeat kids come, and they say, well, I did Scratch last time. I want to check out another one, and they're kind of building on their coding knowledge. Other kids, of course, are like, I have this amazing project I've been working on in Scratch for weeks, and I want to keep going. So it's just this really cool opportunity for kids to learn and connect. And I remember at one of the sessions I was volunteering at, a mom came up to me just to thank one of the mentors afterwards, and she said, this has been so cool because I can really see my kids' passion coming out. You know, so for kids who maybe haven't had a lot of success with athletics or whatever, you know, they've maybe been looking for something like this. It provides a free way for them to connect with other kids who are interested, as well as some professionals, some mentors who might give them some perspective or some ideas about things they might be interested in the future.
Well, and speaking of passion, can we talk about some of the benefits that students gain when they learn how to code? I'm sure that you've seen a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fun. I mean, first of all, it totally taps into kids' curiosity and creativity. And especially, like, I work with elementary students, and I think that is something that so many young students are just abounding in, is all this curiosity and all this creativity. And it really taps into that and then helps them to learn to be really resourceful and problem solvers. You know, so many times they'll encounter little problems that prevent their project from working, and they will. We use a learning management system called Schoology in our school, and we have set up in our coding clubs tips and troubleshooting forums. So students post questions to that, and other students post answers. Or they post tips that they encounter. So it really empowers kids to do some of the problem solving on their own, or to use each other as resources. Critical thinking is another one. I mean, it's so cool to see them as they're trying to sort of debug a program that didn't work right the first time, as they go through and say, oh, I wanted it to move backwards, so I needed to use -10 instead of +10. And there's that math connection with the XY coordinate plane. And, you know, just seeing them really using their critical thinking skills, you just know that those things, those skills are really being bolstered and will help them across all curricular areas.
Definitely.
Can I jump in there for a moment? Because we have a question I think that ties in. Laura from Virginia, she does a coding club for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and she's wondering if you think that coding should be a graduation requirement. Is it something that should be required of students?
In my personal opinion, I think that would be awesome. I think it could be integrated into maybe like a math or a science requirement. There are so many different ways that it could be integrated that I think it would be really amazing for kids to have that kind of as a universal thing, that everybody gets to try it out. I know there are some states that are working on getting computer science standards sort of across the board. I know Minnesota is talking about it, but we're not quite there yet. How about you guys in your states? Do you have computer science standards that are sort of statewide, or how does that work for you guys?
David, you can start.
We don't, as far as I know, have standards, but I know that it is part of, as you said, the conversation moving forward as to what the best approach is for this, because, of course, there is the argument to the contrary, that not all students should code, just in the same way that not all students should take auto tech, or not all students should take, you know, whatever. So I think they're trying to. There's a bit of a culture change, a culture shift, and they're. I think slowly but surely the conversation is coming to the forefront, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 3 to 5 years it were a more prominent part of our state curriculum.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that we're there yet in Illinois either. Certain districts, of course, like Laura had mentioned in her question, Chicago Public Schools is making it a graduation requirement, but it's definitely not consistent.
Hmm.
So, and actually, to kind of follow up on Laura's question, she had noted that she has a girls' coding club. So let's talk a little bit about girls and coding. What have you noticed, like, what's your perspective when it comes to teaching girls how to code?
Well, it's interesting because when I first started working with students at my school and kind of getting the word out that I was going to be teaching coding, I had a lot of boys who were interested right away. Oh yeah, my dad talks to me about coding. Yeah, my dad is a programmer, and oh yeah, I like games. I want to learn how to make games. And I didn't have as many girls interested until they tried it out. And I think sometimes the first step is to really encourage girls to just try it out and to give them that opportunity, and then sometimes giving them, a partner to work with, or giving them kind of a purpose for it. For example, I worked with a group of 6th grade girls last year as a part of the Technovation Challenge, which is this global challenge for middle and high school girls to program, design, and then pitch an app that helps to address a social issue in their community. And having that purpose for coding was so motivating for those girls. I mean, they were really interested in, well, we want our app to be really helpful to students our age. So what are some issues that we could do? And what would we want in an app that we would use? And I mean, they were just really excited about it. And I'm sure boys would be too, but just the interest that was generated around this idea of having a purpose. I told them, hey, we're coding for good here. We're using our superpower for good. This is really awesome. And they got really excited about it. So that Technovation Challenge is a pretty cool thing. I know a teacher that I was working with is talking about, hey, what if we had a recess coding group for girls one day and for boys one day? Like, it'd just be interesting to see kind of what the different dynamics were and how we could really help to encourage both groups in different ways. So definitely an avenue that I'm interested in exploring more. But I also volunteer with another coder dojo that just works with girls. And it's really fun to see how popular it's gotten. We went from having to do quite a bit of marketing to get the word out to now it's sold out last time. And by sold out, they're always free, but we ran out of tickets, we ran out of spots. So pretty cool to see interest grow in it, and to see girls just get really interested in it. And it doesn't matter if they're not going to be computer scientists when they grow up. It doesn't matter if that's maybe not where their career path or their career dreams necessarily lie. These skills are so transferable to other areas that even if they're going to be writers or teachers or anything, these skills will really help them out, I think, in their future.
Can I ask maybe a clarifying question about the coding dojo? And maybe you mentioned it, maybe I just completely spaced out. But the question would be, is it that anyone can come, sort of, you mentioned a ticket, but is it whenever you have it, like open hours, do people just show up if they can make it, or do they sign up and then there's like a 4-week run or a 6-week program or something like that, or is it kind of catch as catch can? If you can make it, come and you'll pick up where you left off. Is it more like an open hours kind of thing, or is it sort of programming?
Good question. So I'm not sure how other places run theirs. The way that the two run that I'm involved in are that they go through Eventbrite. And so we're just limited by our space and then by the number of mentors that we get, because the ratio that we try to maintain is between 3 to maybe 5 kids per mentor, that kids can get some one-on-one attention. So those are really the only limiting factors, the space and then the number of mentors. And then, like I said, we just run it through Eventbrite so that we can kind of keep tabs on how many kids we can have come to really benefit them. But I don't know. I'm not sure if other coder dojos are the same, or if they have more of an open hours sort of an establishment. It'd be interesting to check that out, because I could see that being really cool too.
Right. Well, I'm thinking of some of the makerspace community centers that I've seen before, where they're just
Yeah.
kind of open space hours, and you can come and go at any given time based on your own schedule. And but that would make it obviously difficult for scheduling mentors and things like that for a program like that.
Yeah, but makerspaces, I mean, that's such an awesome concept too. At our school, where we got a grant and have just started kind of getting teachers into our makerspace and getting kids making, and it's so fun to see them getting excited about being hands-on with things and then also creating things through technology and through code. Because it does. It fits in, like, then 3D printing. What a perfect crossover, right? Like,
Right.
hey, you get to program something, and then you get to actually see it manifest, and you get to hold it. It's so cool.
Right. Right.
So getting more into like the coding like in the classroom, I know that we have a lot of teachers who are watching. Where do you start? So it's a two-part question. Where do you start from the teacher side, and where do you start in teaching the students?
So it's interesting. I was doing a little bit of research because I was talking with some librarians a couple weeks ago about coding, and one of the Scratch resources talks about that there's a perfect balance as kind of a facilitator of giving time for free play and then giving some structured learning time. And I think as a teacher, that's really a helpful tip, because we don't need to be the experts. We don't need to know everything there is to know about whatever coding platform we're going to have students use, because really the exploratory and sort of discovery process is such a powerful part of the learning for the students and for the teacher. It doesn't matter if I think I go in knowing everything. Like today I was teaching about Scratch, and I was like, oh yeah, we're going to share our projects to our class studio, so if you go to your folder, I was trying to give them all the instructions, and then I got to a point and I was like, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to do. And a kid was like, oh yeah, you just go here and here and here. Like things change on such a rapid pace that even when we as teachers go in thinking, oh yeah, I've got this, I know exactly where everything's going to be, inevitably something changes. But luckily, the kids are there, and they are so savvy. This is the world they live in. We don't need to go in knowing everything. And sometimes, like, as a mentor and a teacher, I feel like I am a better mentor to kids who are learning something if I don't know as much about it, because then I can say to them, hey, let's explore that together. Or, if they ask me a question, I can tell them, well, I'm not sure, but what do you think we should do next? Or where could we look for that? Sort of lead through questioning and really putting the responsibility back on them, because I want them to be resourceful. I want them to be able to figure it out even if I'm not there. And so as a teacher, it's a little scary thinking that, right? Like, yes, my lesson plan today is a little wide open, but I know we're going to get to where we want to go eventually. But what comes out of it is, I think, super powerful.
Well, and kind of to go along with what you're saying, I know in the state of Illinois we've adopted Danielson's as like the teacher observation tool, and to be the excellent teacher, it's when students take the learning into their own hands.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, talk about transfer of ownership.
Right. No, absolutely. I know. Well, and even thinking, like, today I was filling out this survey for our school is going to be a part of a Scratch Junior pilot, and this survey was asking about like teaching philosophy, and it was just really, how sometimes surveys get you thinking. There were a few questions about, like, in your classroom, is structure and discipline kind of the most important thing, or is play and questioning and exploring? And I thought, wow, those are some really interesting, extremes to think about, and how do we kind of find the right balance, the right mix, so that students really are in charge of their learning?
That's, the age-old question.
Right, the million-dollar question. Yeah.
All right. So if any of our viewers have any questions, feel free to put them into the question and answer section, and we'll be sure to answer your questions.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, I see behind you what looks to be a Sphero. Is that a Sphero hiding
It is
behind
a
you?
Sphero. Oh, I forgot I had that back there. Well, well, how convenient. Yes, let me just grab it.
Yeah, we're
Yes, here it is. My
we're
dog
big fans of the
absolutely loves it.
Spheros.
Just kidding, she
Yeah.
hates it.
Now, do you use that in any of your classwork or any of your coding dojos or things like that?
So I just got it at a conference. It was like a part of a silent auction, and I won it, and I was super excited. So I just have been exploring with it a little bit at home, but I'm really interested to hear about how other people are using it, because I know that like if you go into the developer part of it, you can do a lot of coding.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a chance to explore that yet. Have you used it very much, or what can you tell me?
Yeah, we use it actually quite a bit. I'm the library media specialist at my school, and we've been bringing in lots of different types of technology. We've opened the Makerspace a couple of years ago, and I run evening events on a regular basis. And tomorrow night we actually have a robotics one focused on Spheros. And so they're great because you can very easily download the Macro Lab app, which will allow you to create programs that the Spheros will run through. So they'll run through a series of commands that you can edit. You can change the parameters very quickly. You could have it run through a maze and change colors and change directions. And so tomorrow night we're going to have all these different stations set up around the library, and kids are going to partner a program to meet different challenges at each of the stations. And then we'll have iPads there for them to create short videos explaining how they did it, and also showing that their Spheros actually completing the challenge. So we're really excited about it. So I'm a total Sphero lover right now. I've got a whole bunch of them that are lined up on my desk in the library right now, charging up for tomorrow night.
That sounds so awesome. I want to come. That's so fun.
Yeah, but I saw it hiding there behind your vase, so.
I can't believe you saw that. Good eye. Yeah, here it is.
I've been looking at them a lot the last couple of days.
Hashtag Sphero crazy. What? That's so cool. Do you have any resources that you could share out at all?
Well, Sphero, they have an education section of their website where you can download lesson plans.
Nice.
Which is going to be kind of the foundation of what I'm doing tomorrow. So it'll start with like lesson 1, where you learn how to aim the Sphero, and then you have it create, or you actually have it move sort of forwards and backwards a certain number of milliseconds. And then the next step is to have it create geometric shapes. And then the next step is for it, you can do bowling with it. So you set up like cans, and then you set the parameters within the program to have it go at a certain speed and a certain distance to knock over the cans. You can also, there are a lot of games that go along with the Sphero that are.
As you're talking, I just thought about a really good curricular connection there. Our sixth graders do force and motion. Think about like Newton's laws and bowling, like how much force. I mean, seriously, the curricular connections just come up like this. It's so awesome.
Exactly right. We're gonna do one that's like bocce. So we're gonna create I'm gonna like draw out a big circle in masking tape, and then we're gonna put sort of a ball in the center of the circle, and then there's a drive and draw app where you drag your finger along the screen, and then the Sphero will run that route.
Yeah.
At the speed and the direction that you sort of draw out on so the idea is for you to get your Sphero closest to the one in the center of the circle wins. So I think it's going to be a fun night for them to mess around. Laura had a question about how many people work per Sphero. We're going to partner up. So we're going to have 2 kids per Sphero. So they'll get a Sphero and they'll get an iPad together, so that they have to talk through, we did 2,000 milliseconds there, but it was a little bit slow, so let's make sure that we do 3,000. So they'll have to actually articulate their thinking to try and get through the challenges. And
collaborate, right? I mean, some people think, coding, it's such an isolated thing, it's just a bunch of people sitting in front of computer screens or iPads or something, but there's such a collaborative aspect, and that's a really good example of it.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of which, so what are your plans for the Hour of Code?
We, this year, decided to participate as a whole school. So every student in our school will have an opportunity to code during Computer Science Education Week, which is December 8th through the 12th. And all the resources are available on CoderDojos. And there is a resource for kids in kindergarten or even, preschool up through high school and beyond. So if you're looking for something for kids to do that involves coding and you don't know where to start, that would be an awesome place to start. Last year, that was where we really got started at my school. I had a couple of kids from each grade level that got really excited about coding, and I decided to have coding recess groups after that, and teachers saw how popular those were, and pretty soon I was working with them to get some coding projects integrated into what they were doing, and
Wow.
It's just a really cool way to get it out and visible in your school. How about you guys? Are you doing Hour of Code this year at your schools?
In some variation, yes. We're actually planning a parent coding activity on that Saturday, right before the parent-teacher committee movie night. And so it'll be like a pair coding where like parents get to work with their students on whichever platform they choose. Still working out the fine details. And then I'm actually working on something right now where one of our fourth grade classes is going to break up into small groups of 2 to 3 students in each group, and they're going to go around to the younger grades and like lead an hour of code activity in that class.
Love it. That sounds great.
Awesome. That is awesome. We are doing, I know we have 3 divisions, lower, middle, and upper. In the lower and middle divisions, the students have computer classes. And so within those computer classes, they'll be going through Hour of Code curriculum for at least a week, I think, last time I talked at our last tech meeting. In the upper school I work, we don't have computer class. And so we have a coding club that is a model that students work sort of at their own pace, on their own time. I'm going to be following Sam Patterson's model of having a family coding event. So one of our evening events will be a family coding event, sort of similar, sounds like, to what Tara's doing, and inviting families to come in and have Hour of Code activities for them to work through together, which I hope will be great. Last year, I remember we had a snow day, and so I ended up emailing everyone in the upper school like just this really involved email with like tons of links and like friendly exhortations to, hey, it's a great day to stay.
Yeah, right.
It's snowing out. Let's just stay inside and work on some coding. But I don't think that actually worked out very well. So we're hoping to integrate it a little bit better this year, and hoping that we don't have another snow day.
Right. Well, you guys both talked about family coding experiences, and that's something that I am really excited about too. I heard about it first from Sam Patterson also, I think, and have been talking with some people at my school about how we can make that happen. We're thinking we have a family engineering night that happens in February, and it's been a lot of like hands-on engineering things in the past. We work through a museum that is in our local area. They bring a lot of materials, and kids get to build stuff, and it's super cool. And I thought, computer science is such an important part of engineering too, so what if we had a couple of coding rooms and we had some specific projects, kind of like you were saying, David, how they have some challenges they have to work through, and that way they're not spending the entire night in the coding rooms, because there are other stations they'll want to hit as well. But I just want a way, like you guys were saying, to have families working together with their students around coding, and also to let the kids show off a little bit with what they know how to do. Like I think it's so fun for parents to see like their kindergarten student all of a sudden create this program, in one of the platforms, and to let them know like, hey, yep, your student just created their first computer program, or not their first, their 20th, whatever. And parents are like, what? That's so cool. Right.
Yeah, I've had a couple of parents ask if they could join our coding club.
Totally.
So yeah, I'm rethinking my structure for that based on the interest.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like maybe there does need to be an adult component.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh, that's awesome. So who are you guys kind of looking at as some of the code leaders to follow? Like, do you have kind of a list of people to follow who are really excellent at coding? And let's get a list going.
We should probably publicize that somewhere. Yes, we have a growing list. Let's see. There's David Tess, Then there's James, and they are both Google certified teachers. He worked on a curriculum around coding, which is just awesome. David, I know that you have some.
I do. I mean, I think the question, where I'm only hesitating because we have people who we're connected with who are, coding professionally, but not necessarily integrating coding into the curriculum. So
Sure.
I'm actually right now I'm only distracted because I'm looking at our Coding Connect Google Plus community to see who we have in the list here.
Vicky Sedgwick.
Say it again.
Yep, Vicky Sedgwick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that whole Kids Can Code chat group, they're an awesome group to follow. There are always so many great ideas going around there, and I just always love to kind of hear what they're talking about and participate when I can. I saw that, maybe this is what you were talking about, I saw that Google came out with a coding curriculum that looks like it's for maybe, is it K-8? I'm trying to remember exactly what it was called. I just saw it like 2 days ago on Google+.
Is that the CS First?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's for, it's geared towards high school, like getting coding into high school. But under the resources section, they actually they break down like different apps and like what you can use to meet certain objectives, which is really, really nice. Yeah, so it's a great place to go for an idea of where to start.
It looks like it almost lays out kind of ideas of what to do with each of your different sessions too. Like it gives some ideas or some kind of starting points, which looks pretty helpful too.
Well,
Yeah, they have a community on Google+. So I just joined, like I said, 2 days ago, and I've just been kind of doing a little bit of lurking. Good things, good stuff.
Well, and speaking of like some of Google's incentives, one of their really great ones lately, well, I guess it's been like 6 months or so, is their Made with Code initiative to get like girls into code. The videos on that website are just awe-inspiring.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. It's been fun too. I followed them on Instagram, and to see like the different pictures they post and all the people who made a 3D bracelet and got to have it shipped to them for free. It's just such a cool way to get word out.
Definitely.
Yeah. For sure, for sure.
Laura has a question about the Spheros, and I guess I'm going to throw this at you as well. She asked about getting the covers for the Spheros. I know that you can. The biggest problem that I have with them is we have so many of them in the library, and they're so popular and they get used all the time, is they all look identical. And so they're all sort of rolling around and doing their thing. Like sometimes the kids they lose sight of which one is theirs, and then they're trying to control one that's not theirs.
Yeah.
In fact, theirs is over here, but the one that they think is theirs is over this way. And so we thought about they have these like rubber sleeves you can put on them that are different colors.
Oh, sure.
And we did not get them, although I did put in a request to get them for tomorrow night's event, but I was declined for now. So I'm hoping at some point to be able to order those. And then the next question is having big enough space for the Spheros. They move pretty quickly.
Yep.
And they can bang into things, and so how it is that you have a big enough space for it. We're pretty fortunate in that our library is very modular, and so we can very quickly move aside. Even our bookshelves are on really small wheels, so you can push them out to the side and then open up the floor space for events like this. So that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. And then we'll also be using the corridors for the bigger spaces. But sometimes midday when the kids come in and want to use them, and there are kids in the hallway going to classes, we've got meetings in the conference room across the hall, I sometimes get the, can you please stop having the kids work with the Spheros during this time? And,
quit having them bang into the walls.
Yeah. But for the most part, we're pretty good with the space because we can be modular with it, but we haven't gotten the covers yet. But I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. we do some robotics at our school too. We've used Lego robotics, and then we're looking into Project Lead the Way and some of their robotic stuff. But this fall, we had an opportunity to try out Finch robots. Have you guys seen those before? They look like kind of cute little fish slash birds slash, I don't know, ghosts sort of. But they're tethered. Yeah, look them up, Finch robots. They're tethered with USB, and you can program them with Scratch, which is really cool. So I, through this organization called Code Savvy, which is a nonprofit here in the Twin Cities that works to get coding opportunities for a diverse population of kids, they had about 100 Finch robots, and they were loaning them out to schools for a week. And so we got to try them out, and it was so fun. Like, at first I was thinking, oh, you know, I'm not sure how many classes will be interested. But seriously, I had so many requests that week. I was doing kind of like you were talking about with having some fourth graders to mentor some younger students. We had a really similar situation. We had fourth graders mentoring second graders with it. We actually went into the gym. We found one of the short blocks of time that the FIAD teachers didn't need the gym, and we were in there, and it was awesome. They were so excited about it.
I'm looking at another they're funny looking, huh?
They're so funny looking, yeah. They're very funny looking. But similar to the Sphero, you can have them light up their beak is what they call like their nose. So you can actually program the LED to light up in different ways. They have light sensor, they have touch sensor. They can speak in a very computerized, modularized voice. It's kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a fun thing. I could see kids really getting into something like a Sphero or, you know, some kind of a robotics thing as well.
So I'm sorry, what is the interface for programming it?
So you can program with Scratch 1.0, so the actual, you know, downloaded software for Scratch.
Yeah.
Or you can also program through something called, now I'm gonna all of a sudden blank on what it's called. Not Scratch, but
Blockly.
Well, it is Blockly, but there's a website for it. It'll come to me.
Okay. Well, I was going to say there is in beta form right now a new programming tool for Spheros called Tickle. Tickle
Oh,
app.
yeah?
And it's basically a Blockly interface for programming Spheros, and it's
nice.
going to be amazing. I think it looks incredible. And so it'll be sort of an easier way for maybe the younger students rather than punching in, you know, the numerical values. They might be able to just sort of drag and drop different things.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. This is called Snap. The software, the website for Finch is called Snap. But it's Blockly based, yeah.
Okay. Snap.
Snap. So we were talking before about ways to integrate coding into the curriculum, and one way that I've found that I didn't get to mention is as a way for students to show what they know. So kind of as a redefinition piece at the end of learning, you know, maybe other kids are creating a poster, other kids are creating maybe, you know, a slideshow or something. We have had a lot of success with students using code to create kind of a final product to show what they know about any curricular area. So like when I talk to teachers about ways to integrate, that's oftentimes a place that I'll start. So for example, I just talked to some third grade teachers. They do a project where they study birds for science. And at the end of their science unit, the kids all use their knowledge of birds to kind of design or engineer a bird that has certain characteristics, and they tell where it lives. And I said, what if we used Scratch so that the kids could actually draw their bird using the draw feature in Scratch, or using kind of create a sprite, and then they could animate it in its habitat, and they could kind of share some features about it. So it's not just a poster anymore. Now it's totally redefined. It's an animated, you know, version of this bird that they've created. Do you guys do any of that at your schools at all? Do you have kids create sort of final products using code, or how have you found the best way to integrate at your schools?
We have not done that yet. I've been in many conversations in the last year or so around how we can build this stuff more meaningfully into what we do. The learning curve, the amount of time that it's going to take for faculty to sort of re-evaluate and recreate and restructure. There's interest, but I think we've not yet been able to find that sweet spot where their interest and their availability sort of overlap in a way that's actually going to make a difference. I was speaking to a colleague of mine who works at another school who, of course, came across this problem, which I think most of them do, and she said what her team did is they explicitly assumed the entire learning curve for all the faculty. Mm-hmm. They said, we want to get you on board, we want to help you do this, you don't need to learn how to do any of it. Mm-hmm. We will do it with your students.
Sure.
And they solicited some small number of faculty who did have the time and the interest, and they sort of created this core team of people who were always available. So when the faculty came and said, yeah, we do want to actually recreate that end of unit assessment where students, rather than make the poster or the Prezi or the whatever, are going to build something using code, but I don't know how to code, and I don't have time to learn, well, there's someone there in that core team who's going to say, I will come in and I will work with your students on doing that, and we will assume the entire learning curve for that. And she said that was really the only effective way for them to make progress for that.
Really, we've found that students are getting to be really resourceful as sort of learners advocating for themselves. I mean, mm-hmm. I certainly act as a consultant for students a lot of times, and we have some students doing like Genius Hour projects on code, and I offered to be a consultant and come in and help them. But otherwise, we have students just kind of explore it on their own and do what they can. But it's maybe offered as one of a variety of options.
See, and I think that's where that opportunity exists, right? Yeah. So, traditionally we've always done it this way. You need to create this type right. of project to demonstrate your learning. Right. But even opening that door just a little bit to say, well, maybe you don't make that PowerPoint presentation. Maybe you do something that you want to do that's going to demonstrate it, and giving them that opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's smart. Like at the elementary level, the main thing right now has been the focus on perspective, because when you're reading and writing, you have to know, like, is this coming from first person? Is this coming from third person? Like, so coding has really helped to reinforce that. And then also, like, just the difference between positive and negative cause and effect relationships. So in a 4th grade class that I've been working with, there's been a lot of aha moments, primarily in the math area, especially like how coding relates to angles in a triangle, and how, okay, this is 120, well, if I move it 60, it's not going to trace the line the way it's supposed to. And like the teacher that I'm working with is already saying, yeah, we're doing this in math, which is just awesome.
Awesome.
And those ahas that you get in the room are just awesome. It's like a little song that's being sang.
Totally.
Right. Well, we did have that. I mean, I think there are some obvious math overlaps. I had a conversation with one of our history teachers who was looking at, they do a medieval castles and cathedrals project that they've always done, and he was really interested. He was like, I would love for them, rather than to do whatever they've traditionally done, to maybe, could they build a website? Could we do a web development component to it? Could they make an app where people can ask questions and get information from it? His interest was there, absolutely. But once that school year started, and once sort of the day-to-day kicked in, it has not come back up into the conversation again since then. And so the response that I keep getting from faculty is over the summer. Talk to me during the summer, and because that's the only time I really have to sit down and reevaluate things. And I get that,
yeah, for sure.
But it makes it difficult because in the summer you're away. and their way, and it's difficult to to expect them to come to the table and to really have those curricular conversations. And so I'm finding it to be a difficult sort of, it's like herding cats. It's difficult to try and get that momentum moving in a certain direction.
Yeah, yeah, I hear ya. I hear ya. Well, that's where the makerspace and your library, your media center sound like they really are a crucial component where you can kind of offer it there and, right, kind of be sort of that space where, hey, you want to try that out? Absolutely, come in and try it out.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think by design, I'm hoping that is sort of grassrootsing, if I can use that as a verb.
Totally.
That momentum, right? Trying to build it from the student base, and hopefully, as you said, they then become self-advocates for their own learning in a way that will open up possibilities for them to demonstrate what they know and what they can do in ways that traditionally they've been unable to do.
Nicely said. That sounded really good.
Thank you.
Speaking of saying, coding is really great for like public speaking too. So, like for the speaking and listening standards in the Common Core, like you have to be able to say, like explain a process, and like with that collaboration, students have to speak up and they have to speak in this new language to explain to their neighbor like how to do something, which is just empowering.
Absolutely. Well, and it kind of puts the power in students' hands who maybe don't always have it. It sort of equals out or evens out the playing field a little bit for some kids who maybe aren't always looked upon as experts in different areas. So that's always a plus.
Have you noticed, like academically, how, and I don't know if this is consistent across the board, but how students who maybe don't do well in academics do really awesomely in coding?
Well, it's funny because I had this recess coding group last year, and it was all grade levels, well, 1st through 6th graders, because we had half-day kindergarten last year, so they just didn't have time. But 1st through 6th graders were able to come, and each teacher chose 3 kids for the different sessions. So, 3 kids one time, then they'd switch it up. And at first, it was the kids who were interested, and then there would be kids who maybe needed an opportunity to be a leader in a different way than they had been in the class. Like maybe they made a few bad choices and, the teacher just thought, hey, we're kind of repairing our relationship. You've had a good day today. Would you like to try out some coding? And those kids were amazing at it. I mean, they were really excited about it. They really, put some interest into it, and the excitement that they had when they found success in it was really empowering. And then when they didn't find so much success, they were the ones who were like asking around, like, okay, well, how did you do this one? And, really collaborating and looking for sort of those resource students. So that was kind of cool to see that, it wasn't always, like you say, Tara, the kids who necessarily did great in all the different academic areas or did great even with behavioral stuff in class. It was maybe just kids who were looking for an opportunity to think about things in a little logical way or from a different perspective.
Right.
I like your use of the word logical.
Yeah, it's a big part of it, right? The logic behind it and that critical thinking.
Yeah, I would say one of the challenges that I've experienced with the makerspace area that we have is that many of the kids for whom that is an interest, they are in supervised study hall. They're the kids for whom traditional educational environments are perhaps not ideal. And so, as a result, are not given the schedule flexibility to pop up during a free period because their free periods are kind of supervised because they didn't get their homework done, or they're struggling because they're not, sort of following or keeping pace with what's happening in the classroom. And those are the kids that I want to have in there. Those are the kids I want to have finding success in these different areas. And so I feel like in some ways we're working sort of cross purposes, obviously both with the intent of what's best for the kid and trying to keep that in mind, but I think those are the kids that I want to have in the space, and yet their schedule sometimes doesn't allow them to do that. And it sounds like maybe you're having that same experience.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that brings up a couple of things to, you know, in one of the code.org videos, one of the speakers says something like, the coders of today are the wizards of tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you kind of remember that quote? And
Yep.
I think when I think about, like, why do we want to start teaching coding in elementary school, it's because I think about that tomorrow, right? I think about, well, yeah, we want to teach them coding today so that when tomorrow comes and maybe, you know, they're in middle school or high school, who knows? Maybe the learning opportunities that they have, sort of that exploratory time with coding and maybe the makerspace stuff, maybe that helps them to really find their passion and use their passion for good. And maybe they won't need as many structured study halls. You know, maybe they, I don't know, this is me thinking idealistically, like coding is going to change the world, but it could change the world, you know? It has changed the world. It's the way of life. And so I don't know, I just kind of think about that, like, well, yeah, let's give them the opportunity to learn right away. It's a part of, you know, sort of the core curriculum, or it should be, and as they're learning sort of their basic things in early elementary school, pretty soon it just becomes second nature to them, and the things they can do with it are just so incredible. And I don't know. It reminds me of a conversation I had with a high school teacher at a conference this fall. She was talking about her makerspace and how she was having like a code club, kind of like you were talking about, David, and one of the kids who volunteered to lead the code club, the district basically said, or the network people basically said, yeah, he can't do that because he's already hacked into our network and we just don't want him leading this. And you think about, like, using that power for good, right? Like, that's exactly the kid who should be teaching it, because he clearly has the knowledge and skill, but, right, we got to tap into that so he can use his knowledge for good, right?
Right. Rechannel him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's 9 o'clock Central Time, that is. I know we're in a bunch of different time zones right now. And I think that's actually a really good point to end the night on.
Thanks so much for having me on, you guys. This has been a great, fun conversation. Lots of good ideas shared, and hopefully we can keep the conversation going.
Please, yeah. And I threw the links into to a couple of the resources we talked about into the event chat.
Awesome.
People can check those out.
Awesome. So for anybody who's interested, feel free to follow us. We're Coding Connect on Twitter. We also have a Google Plus group, and we're developing a website which will be codingconnect.org. So stay tuned for more broadcasts in the very near future. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.